Welcome back, all. Tonight I got a review for something I'm pretty excited about. This is the first deluxe wave of the new Studio series of Transformers toys. For anyone that doesn't know, Studio series is a toy line dedicated to the Transformers movie franchise as a whole. So rather than being marketed for one specific movie, it's kind of like a generations take on the movie characters, where it hits characters from pretty much every facet of the movie universe. The toys that we have here specifically cover the first, third, and fourth movies. There are going to be other figures in the Voyager and Leader price points. The Studio series, by and large, isn't even due out until April. However, as a special promotion during Toy Fair here this year, they released the first deluxe wave on Hasbro Toy Shop for a limited release. And I was lucky enough to jump right on that as soon as it was announced. So I have these here to review for you. One thing you may notice if you're looking at these boxes as I'm talking, every box has both a Takara Tomy logo and the Hasbro logo on them. And this seems to be reflective of the big brand unification push that they're doing right now, where instead of Hasbro doing one take on a figure character and Takara doing a different take, they're just releasing the exact same toys in both markets now. So everything's going to be co-branded from here on out, apparently. Here are the backs of the boxes. Each one highlights a character in their robot and vehicle modes. Tells you how many steps it takes to transform them. And, the steps here range from 18 to 22. So these are fairly complex figures, which is, as a collector, something I like. I would rather a figure take a little longer to transform than just be over simplistic and, lacking articulation. So it's kind of a return to form to the types of figures that were released around the time frame of the first and maybe the second movie. Ones that adults liked, kids not so much, which is why over the course of each subsequent movie the toys tended to get simpler in design, which was not something that most adults were crazy about. If you're really looking at these, you might notice that there's some writing on the Bumblebee box, and you can thank my son for that, who decided that Bumblebee would be much funnier as Bumblebutt. So, yep, that's kid humor. And he also drew some black lines on the Stinger box for some reason, so probably just gonna have to ground him for, like eternity. You can see down here, it advertises that each of these figures actually comes with a little movie display, a little background, and a little stand to put them on. So they really are driving home the point of this being a collector-oriented line. This is for people that are either Transformers fans or just big fans of the Transformers movies. And they do seem to be continuing kind of the upward trend in quality that you started seeing with the Last Night toys. Not the ones that were just redecos of existing toys, but the actual new molds. They were looking a bit more similar to older movie toys with all the detail and complexity than, say, Age of Extinction toys, which even the, quote-unquote generations takes on the characters felt like a lower age group, low complexity figure. But that's enough chatting out of me. We're going to go ahead and do these guys in order, starting from Bumblebee, working our way to the right, and look at each one individually. And I hope this review gives you a good preview of, what you can come to expect here in April. Let's get started. Right. Ah. Alright, so we're kicking this off with Bumblebee. Bumblebee. As some of you may already know, he is my favorite character in Transformers. Absolute favorite. And this studio series Bumblebee is actually a retool of the Last Night Wave 3 Deluxe Bumblebee. It basically just keeps the inner robot the same and just reshells him in an older style Camaro to match the one that he's first seen in the first Transformers movie. I don't have the Last Night Bumblebee to compare this to because I still haven't managed to find one. I've had no issue finding the rest of that particular wave that he's in, but for some reason Bumblebee just isn't there, which has kept me from doing a full review of that wave. But I shan't lament my lack of Bumblebees, despite how much it just breaks my heart not to have more Bumblebee toys. As you can see here, the little diorama that this bee comes with is the little junkyard from the fight scene with Barricade in the first Transformers movie. So it's very fitting for him, considering he is taking the form of his old 70s Camaro. And I dropped his gun. So, here's the gun. We'll just move right to that then, huh? So it can be plugged into the back of his car mode pretty securely, just for a little storage. And, depending on whether or not you want that there, you can remove it, whatever. The design of the car is pretty faithful to, how it looked in the movie. One big issue, though, is that panels that are natural yellow plastic and panels that are painted plastic, like here on the door, may be hard to tell with the lighting through the camera, but they really don't match well at all. It's definitely an eyesore for somebody that wants to display this, in his vehicle mode for, maybe the car collectors out there. I'm about to transform this guy, but before I do, I just want to point out that putting him into car mode, you have to put this whole hood and front grille section just kind of over all this, and it is a nightmare to do. It is the tightest fit that you can imagine, to the point like you're worried you're going to break this thing, especially when it's attached to clear plastic like that. So be warned, if you do get this toy, you're going to fiddle with this thing a lot trying to get it in car mode. It's fairly small compared to some of the other deluxe Bumblebees they put out there, but as a result, he does scale very well with the other Studio Series figures, which is one of the points of that toy line, so ends up working out pretty well. He is a marked improvement over the original 76 Camaro Bumblebee that they put out with the first movie. That thing was just very hideous and cheap looking. I mean, it was not well executed. You can just see the progression and toy engineering that's occurred in the last 11 years. He's got a very good range of articulation. Everything moves like it needs to. His waist does turn, which is good. Head turns. Doesn't really... it looks up and down a little bit, so it's good. You can see here that he has his weapon stored kind of on his butt there. That's a handy storage spot for it. However, it does really block his legs from swinging backwards when it's there. So you can't put him in very dynamic, exaggerated poses, unfortunately. His right arm is special in that it actually detaches just below the elbow. This arm doesn't do that. It's one solid piece. You go ahead and pull this guy off, and you can attach his little blaster. You just go ahead and put it on there like that. And that places his hand. And it looks very good. And his right arm actually has a peg on it so that you can peg it into his butt and, store it that way. Though if you look too closely, it looks a little weird. Looks like he's got somebody behind him just scratching his butt all the time. So it's up to you whether or not you want to keep that there, or maybe just set it off to the side if you think it looks better. So, it's not a bad toy by any means. It's one of the better movie Bumblebees I've seen in a while. I was very impressed by how they took one version of Bee that turns into a new Camaro and managed to retrofit him with a different shell that turns him into a completely different one and have it all work pretty well. The big downside of that is that aforementioned problem with, sliding his hood over this whole assembly here. It just really does not want to fit. But it's a good toy. Not as good as the Masterpiece, obviously. I kind of feel like once you have Masterpiece Bumblebee, there's no real need to get any other one. Unless, you like making videos for people online and you got to show them all your toys. Having just covered Bumblebee, it's only natural we move on to his evil counterpart, Stinger, from the Age of Extinction movie. Here he sees this very nice red sports car. I do know the type of car it is, but I'm not even going to embarrass myself by trying to pronounce it. I just don't even know. It starts with an H. But it does look very good. Not quite as shiny as I would like. I was kind of hoping for glossier red there, but it serves. He can store his little saw blade things underneath here. One of them fell off. There you go. And like any, vehicle accessory, you can choose to have it on there or not. The scene depicted is the final battle in Hong Kong from the fourth movie, which is appropriate because that's where Stinger really actually starts to do something in the movie rather than just stand there on a display. We'll move straight into his robot mode. It's probably worth pointing out that this is actually the second Deluxe Stinger toy made. The first one was a Takara exclusive toy, but it was purely just a redeco of the Age of Extinction Bumblebee. This is the first time we get a new mold for Stinger, and it does look significantly more accurate to his movie model than the Takara toy did. However, it is by default going to suffer from one issue, in that being one of those Neo-Decepticons from the fourth movie that transform through some Beast Machines level just shape-shifting magic more than an actual, mechanical conversion. This guy's going to suffer from having kibble in places where his movie model had nothing, because in an actual toy, you need a mechanical conversion. Stinger manages to hide this pretty well, except for one spot, and you can probably see that, but I will pull him close to draw attention to it. This is the roof of the car that is folded up on the inside of his right forearm. It's just there. There's no way to pack it in any better. It's just there in the way, being bulky. I feel they probably could have found a way to make this work a little better. Put some more hinges on it, make it more panels and have it fold up better or something, because it's just really, really noticeable. But that's my only real gripe with the toy. Everything else about it I think is fantastic. The chest is very cool, has a really neat transformation where, the wheels are down inside here. Head sculpt is really nice. Very detailed. Like little shoulder protrusions there. And here he's got this apparatus on his back so that he can have his little saw blade type items that he has on his back in the movie. So overall, a really nice figure to finally, get proper. It's not something I thought Hasbro was going to bother with, so I'm impressed and surprised that they decided to give us a new Stinger toy. Our third guy is the Decepticon Crowbar from the Dark of the Moon film. He's here in front of his background, which is the highway battle scene when the three Dreads, which Crowbar is a member of, were coming after Sentinel Prime. Crowbar turns into this police black SUV, and in the movie, all three of the Dreads turned into identical vehicles and then had very different robot modes. So you could never really tell, who was who, and oh, surprise, not Crowbar. That's Crowbar. Yeah, see, pulled a switcheroo on you. This is the actual Crowbar toy. This guy right here is Berserker from the Last Night toy line. And Crowbar is a retool of Berserker, though it's almost a bit of a stretch to call him that because their robot modes are almost entirely new, different parts, but their vehicle shell is made to seem, pretty much identical. Even though a lot of these pieces, a lot of these panels that appear to be identical actually aren't. They're connected on different parts, they have different hinge setups. So I'm really impressed with the level of detail, that they got here, trying to make these pretty much indistinguishable from each other. Now, Berserker here can store his little baton things on the underside. Crowbar doesn't have that ability. His little club weapons just store on the sides of his vehicle mode, like this. They are the exact same weapon as Berserker's. However, on my copy, these things both came just bent in the package like this. They both bend at a pretty noticeable angle. Luckily, my Berserker didn't have that issue, but this guy definitely does, and it can be a bit of an eyesore, so I'm really disappointed about that. But yeah, I mean, his vehicle mode is really cool. Holds together pretty well. Actually holds together a bit better than Berserker's. Alright, let's look at the robot mode. And here Crowbar is, not even looking at that explosion behind him, as his hair wafts in the wind. So this is his robot mode. You can see he's got his little hair tendril things like he does in the movie. Fortunately, they're kind of sticking up just from being positioned in his vehicle mode for so long. So, it's an issue you have with soft plastic. And, once it gets bent, it's hard to unbend it. I guess the plus side is it can make for some nice, dramatic poses, make it look like he's running or in action. So yeah, he's a very monstrous looking Decepticon. He's got these massive fangs that are pretty much almost covering his eyes. He's haunched over a good deal. Got these giant clawed feet. He's got more little tendrils coming out of his back here. And he's very cool looking. Balances rather well. You can get him in a pretty decent number of poses. Just for comparison, here is Berserker. Just so I can highlight how vastly different their robot forms are underneath that almost identical shell. I mean, the chest is different. Most of the arm pieces are different. I think the shoulders are different too. Hands are different, legs. I mean, there's very little that's reused between these two. Even the little shoulder connectors are actually different pieces. So it is really cool how they managed to take two robots that, match only in maybe theme and cram them into the same exact vehicle mode. And lastly, we have Ratchet. Just like Bumblebee, he's meant to represent the way he looks in the very first Transformers movie. The background, you can see the battle for Mission City going on with the fighter jets, explosions, wrecked cars, and everything. Him being a deluxe class figure is a bit smaller than I'm used to Ratchet being. The only other figure of movie Ratchet I have is the original Voyager toy. So he does feel small by comparison, but despite his smaller scale, this version is actually significantly more screen accurate than the Voyager. So you can get a good look at him here. He's got his typical, almost neon yellow green. He's got his little stripes, fire department, search and rescue there, all about symbol. He's got a really nice painted grill here. As you can see, his saw blade can plug into the little spare tire. It's a very good vehicle mode. The only things I'm not really crazy about are the obvious fingers sticking out on the sides there. And this little rack, bar, whatever you call it, it's supposed to plug in firmly to the top and then be pretty much just straight. And mine is just, it can't assume that. It's always just kind of bent a little bit, doesn't stay plugged in because it's very soft plastic. So it's not something that's incredibly noticeable unless you're really scanning this thing over. But it does bother me that it couldn't be a little, I don't know, more of a tighter package, I suppose. Here's the robot mode. Honestly, this is one of my favorite figures out of this first wave. I think he just comes out looking really nice, especially in his robot mode. Pull him closer. So he's got full levels of articulation. His ankles are in ball joints, so you can do a lot with that. Arms can, kind of bend and turn every which way. These little shoulder pieces are supposed to kind of not plug in, but just kind of rest this little nook here. And it's kind of a pain to get him to stay that way. His head turns back and forth. One thing to point out, this bumper right here can be a bit of a nightmare to try to unattach from the grill portion to pull down his robot mode. It clicks in there very tightly, and it takes a good deal of force to get it back out. So, something to be on the lookout for. Here he's got his saw blade weapon again, which can plug into one of the 5mm holes on either one of his forearms. Or you can just hold it, though that looks kind of silly, just holding a saw blade. Like I said, he's very screen accurate, especially compared to other figures of this character. Got some back kibble there, but I won't hold it against him. Maybe the one thing I don't like about this figure is that it seems very unpainted, which is kind of unfair to it because it actually, has a fair amount of paint and tampographics on it. But I think it's just the fact that it's mostly this just flat, neon green color. It's not shiny like you would expect him to be based on how he is in the movie. And there are just certain areas, especially in like the face, where it just seems like color is lacking. Like they didn't quite go as far as they should have. And, it's a minor grievance. I mean, where the paint is applied, it's applied well. I love the way it looks on his shins and his feet here. You don't have like any kind of drippage or anything from the paint. It's all done very neatly. Yeah, I definitely like this guy. And there we have it, the first deluxe wave of the new Transformers Studio series. These toys really are impressive to me. For the first time in, a good while, I feel like Hasbro and Takara are actually really trying with the movie toys. You saw a little bit of it in The Last Night. The new mold figures from that line were much, much better than what had been released in the previous years. But I feel that these guys are even a step above those toys. Granted, Bumblebee is a retool. Something I didn't mention earlier, but if you take a look, you can see just how tall Ratchet actually is. He's much, much taller than Bumblebee, which I mentioned earlier that scale is a big focus for this toy line. So even though Ratchet is a deluxe, he is a good bit taller than most deluxes. So they found kind of the right balance of keeping him in the same size class, but still making him big enough to be believable. So, I'm really looking forward to what else this studio series is going to bring us. I love the idea of the included cardboard backdrops for them. It just makes them feel that much more like adult collectibles than just, toys for kids. I'm happy with the way these first 4 figures turned out. And I still can't believe that I got this Bumblebee before I got the one from The Last Night. Just seems, like a major distribution issue to me. So yeah, I'm totally sold on these. Hasbro has convinced me to go all in on this toy line with these first 4 figures, so expect more reviews coming from those. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. I hope you enjoyed this review. Feel free to let me know down below what you think of, these toys, what you thought of the review, whether or not you want to pick them up. I hope you all enjoy them as much as I did. And with all that said, I will see you next time.